cloud. There we go. Okay. One more time. So now I'd like to turn it over to Mitchell, who is our program chair, who volunteers his time to find speakers for our monthly programs. So Mitchell, it's
Yeah.
all yours.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Yeah. Welcome everybody tonight. Thank you, Rosemarie Christopher, for um, volunteering to present the topic effects of recall in the food industry due to poor employee training. If you haven't had a chance to read over Rosemary's bio, you can quick go through that a minute and introduce Rosemary. Rosemary has spent over 30 years of leadership experience with ASQ, holding various different positions and membership leadership roles. She currently is the membership chair of the FD&C division. Her apprenticeship programs in the food and biotechnology industry aim to ensure that 100 apprentices earn at least one ASQ certification and maintain ASQ membership. Currently, at least 30 apprentices and mentors are working through ASQ Yellow Belts modules, and 8 are preparing for CIQ exam, 2 of which I've already passed. So it pretty obvious that she is heavily involved in the ASQ program, as well as continuing the legacy of it through her students and mentorship program. And yeah, thank you very much, Rosemary. I won't get too far into your abstract and leave that for your presentation here to evolve. If there's anything that I also missed and you'd like us to be aware of, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
and welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased that you invited me to speak. And today, I want to tell you, for starters, that my passion is quality. I've worked in, as pointed out, I started with ASQ 35 years ago, and barely 2 years in, the regional director out here got me involved in volunteering, but it did take him 2 years to get me involved. And that but the love of quality and the love of my fellow ASQ members in all the country, but particularly in the Western United States, has kept me a steady contributor to ASQ, to quality professionals, to their careers, and to consulting. So, but why am I doing this particular presentation with you today? Well, a little factoid that you don't know about me is that I grew up on a farming commune. It was part of the Back to the Land movement that was in existence after World War II, during and after World War II, because food was kind of scarce. They were sending everything to the war effort, and families were encouraged to grow their own food. So we practiced organic farming. Now you have to understand that you may say, so what? Well, organic farming was the way everything used to be. There were no pesticides. Don't forget, the water was clean, the soil was clean, the air was clean. And so we had um, we had a very deep commitment to eating off the land, eating clean food, and paying attention to quality and food safety, because that's the way farmers were. Farmers and farm people were the very first conservationists ever, and food was safe because the whole community expected it to be safe, and that's the way I began. So fast forward to today, all of a sudden, I find the American Society for Quality when I became a search person for executive search. And the people that I found most comfort in working with were the mid-level to senior level quality professionals in engineering, pharmacy, food, medical devices, and so forth. So but I gravitated toward the food industry not so long ago, about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, over 20 years ago, when President Obama signed the food law into operation. So here I am today, and you say, well, why are we involved? Why is it important to be involved, everybody to be involved in food today? Well, first of all, it's the law, but it's also a growing industry, and there are more people to feed, as you can see, and everybody from farm to fork must address the challenges that are brought on by tech advances, economic uncertainty, skilled worker shortages, and all the automation all the automation that's out there, and all the emerging, you can see the emerging technologies there that brought food to thousands and millions of people. But we have to be aware that automation and technology without human critical thinking is kind of a disaster. So here we have, like I said, 2011, the food law. That got me involved. My food, drug, and cosmetic division was built by the drug industry, in fact. So our certifications that we have in FD&C, food, drug, and cosmetic, had to do with pharmaceutical GMP professional cert, and HACCP, which was for the meat and dairy industry, and that was what the focus was. There wasn't a focus for this overarching ability to look at food safety as a main focus of the whole food industry. So I got involved, and you can see that this this food law has its main thrust is safety. And the first person that ever got me involved, Mas Hari, some of you may remembered him. He was in California State Food Drug Branch, and he would say to me, I'd say, we have to do training. He'd say, Rose, all you have to focus on is food safety. And I'd say, why? And he'd say, because the FDA doesn't really care about food quality. It only cares about food safety, because people can be killed by these 3 pathogens that you see up on the screen. So food safety culture became very important, but not paid very much attention to because it was considered overhead. But the FDA finally, because of President Obama signing that law, the FDA now had authority to drag people into court for bad things that happen when these pathogens kill people. So the law really emphasized the recalls because the FDA gave industry time periods by which they must apply the planks of the law, if you will, and there's 7 of them. So the big industries had to comply straight away, and then the smaller food companies or the mid-sized companies had to be compliant by 2015, and all food companies from farm to fork, except the tiniest little farms and restaurants, didn't, I should say, people processing food, those tiny little ones that were only selling retail did not have to be so worried. It was the people where there was massive amounts of food to be delivered to the public that they really were concerned about. And we thought we kind of had it under control, but here we are. And look at the recalls from just from 2020 to 2024, We had recalls that were growing from 454 in 2020 to 2023. I should correct myself, to 547 in 2023, and we don't have the data yet for 2024. But these, according to the Food Safety magazine, showed a 20% increase in recalls. So why do we, why do we have these issues? Is because we have pathogens that kill people. So here are your leading causes of pathogens. And according to the CDC, pathogens data from 1998 to 2022 show that salmonella recalls, which we'll get to in a minute, more than 75% of salmonella recall illnesses are attributed to 7 food categories, which are like chicken, and that all falls under these bacterial contaminations that you see over on your screen there. 75% come from 7 food categories when it's salmonella, and that's chicken, fruits, seafood, vegetables, such as vegetables, green leafy vegetables, and so forth. And the fruits are, tomatoes are among fruits, and tomatoes, spinach, you can imagine, and then nuts, and then beef and turkey. So that's salmonella. That's what salmonella will get you. E. coli, over 85% of the recalls between 1998 and 2022 are from E. coli. And that affects all the row crops, such as leafy greens. So you remember the spinach recalls. So that comes from leafy greens and beef. And then the listeria recalls are often, they're lesser, but they're often related to dairy products and vegetable row crops and fruits. So each year in the United States, there are estimated to be 9 million people getting sick because of contamination, and 56% of those people are hospitalized, and 1,300 die of a food-borne illness. That's really unacceptable. And again, why are we concerned about this? It's because in California, in those, remember I said there were 20% increase in recalls, and basically it came from 16% of those came from California. 96% of them or whatever came from the rest of the country, but we're the most populous state in the union. And why are we concerned about this? It's because we live in California. California is the food basket of the country. And, we want food to be safe. We live here. So let's look at what we have in terms of recalls. What's the cost of recalls? Okay. The common most cost of recalls. And by the way, excuse me a minute, I have to go back and show you this. Look at the average cost for a small company. It's $10 million. But that only involves pulling the stuff off the shelves, bringing it back, and getting rid of it. All of that has to be thrown away. That's just law. So that does not include, that $10 million does not even begin to cover human sickness, injury, and death. It doesn't cover the loss of consumer confidence, revenue to the company, damage to the brand and reputation of the company, business closures, job losses, all the people that lose their jobs. When people die, you can bet there's a huge, huge cost. And fines and litigations are just the beginning of your troubles. So why do we, what are the root causes? Why do we see this happen? Well, we're looking at contamination. Okay, like we said before, 3 huge pathogens, right? E. coli, salmonella, and listeria. Physical contaminants. Okay, so Fortunately, none of us perhaps have had a piece of glass show up in our peanut butter or, our butter or something like that. But there are things like glass, metal, and plastic. It's bound to happen. Food is processed in these big plants on big lines and so forth. Undeclared allergens. There are 9 allergens, right? So we have undeclared allergens like peanuts, if they're not declared, soy nuts, tree nuts, items that are not listed on the label that can put people and maybe even children into anaphylactic shock. Sanitation issues like cross-contamination and filthy plants, pests all over. And then if temperature controls is another reason. If food is not correctly processed, whether it needs to be frozen or whether it needs to be heated or whether it needs to have a certain cooling time, if these things are not followed, you can have a real disasters on your hands. So let me, not to belabor it too much, but just because I might have people that don't know about this in our audience, let's talk about a few case histories here really quickly. Here you see in front of you the Peanut Corporation of America recall in 2008 and 9. And by the way, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. This happened in 2008 and 9, and it motivated this young man whose mother died from peanut on saltines, became relentless in pursuing his Congress people and pursuing the Congress to get this law that had been sitting there waiting for somebody to do something in Congress, and it wasn't being done. So because his mother died from peanut butter on saltines, whilst she was in a rehab facility, he became the person that pursued this until that law got on President Obama's desk for signature in 2011. 3,900 products from different companies were impacted. 714 people found themselves in hospitals in 46 different states. So, but the most important thing to look at here is just understand what would you do if this was your family, anybody in your family? Even one death is unacceptable. And when it's so preventable because of poor sanitation practices that allowed the salmonella to get in the peanut butter. But that is only half of the story. The other half is how this caused a bankruptcy that caused many, many people to lose their jobs. And then people had to go to prison, and rightly so for many, many years. And the person that I'm concerned about that went to prison was the quality manager for 5 years, a young mother who had been forced by the owner who went to jail and his broker brother to shop labs until she found a lab that would put the salmonella under the level of statistical significance. That's very important to understand, is the role of the quality person in speaking truth to power. Here's the Bluebell ice cream. Foreign objects found in the ice cream, in addition to Listeria contamination, and also plants that were unacceptably not kept up in sanitation. And how do we know this? Is because the Listeria came from workers who weren't properly trained, who went out to have cigarette breaks, came back into the plant with Listeria all over their hands, and it got all over the ice cream. And the ice cream was made in Texas. It's the Texas ice cream. It's almost a religion in Texas to have your Bluebell ice cream. And what ended up happening is they put it in big bins, and then they shipped it over to their Oklahoma facility for packaging, and then the Listeria got all over the Oklahoma facility. But one of the little backstories about this is people are so passionate about their Bluebell, and they don't understand about Listeria, which is why, again, the quality professional's job is so very important. The people grabbed it before it was taken off the shelves and started selling it on the black market. Okay, so you have to understand, again, the role of the quality professional and training and clean and understanding sanitation standard operating procedures, really very, very important. Here we have Abbott in 2022. You'd think we'd have learned by now about contamination and clean, clean facilities. Here, 2 babies died, illnesses in 36 states. No excuse here for this. And 483 corrective actions from the FDA. How does that happen when we have proper training and proper people being on the alert? Then in 2024, you'd think by now we'd have it under control. No, we don't. Here we have boar's head meats. Many of you use these meats. You use it. Well, here's listeria all over the plant, all over everything. 7 million pounds of deli meats have to be discarded. Liverwurst can no longer be produced. The plants in Virginia is closed. And again, brand destruction and people destruction not acceptable. And then in 2024, you have McDonald's and Taylor Farms. And you see here, you have E. coli on slivered onions. And this is a supplier quality issue. Who is watching the supplier? Who is taking a good look at how the supplier was delivering tainted onions? Now, they voluntarily recalled it from their Colorado plant when it was tracked down. That is true. But the damage is done to their reputation and to the brand, to McDonald's. No matter what you say, you have hesitation now. You may order something, but you may also avoid the product altogether. So this lethal slivered onions went on the quarter pounder. So here you have the FDA finding that infrequent hand washing and dirty equipment were the culprits of this deadly E. coli outbreak that impacted the Taylor Farms, right? So they said at the end there was no safety concern for any of the McDonald's 900 restaurants, but the brand is tarnished. 2 brands are completely tarnished. And then they had to go get a new supplier, and that means a whole bunch of jobs are lost, and nobody's winning on in these cases here. And they're all the causes that I told you. And I went through them very fast, but you get the idea. Why is there a generalized root cause? The generalized root cause is a lack of employee training, actually, because these are all human error, really. People, employees can't see Listeria, E. coli, and Salmonella. So they may get a little, unless they're fully trained, perpetually trained, they're going to forget how deadly it is. So, but there's also maybe shortcuts in the production processes. Like I said, the human error is of not being trained or overlooking things that shouldn't be overlooked in the process. Cost-saving measures, the lack of labeling and monitoring and tracking. Okay, so I would tell you that a lot of this that you see here really has to do with people not being engaged in their work. Okay, so 33% of the workforce only in the United States is an engaged workforce. However, what does that look like to you and I, basically? There's no personalization of work in many of these places. Work doesn't feel meaningful to people. There's no collaboration among employees or the food safety specialists with the people that are in charge of production people. Maybe no collaboration, no teamwork. The quality professionals themselves may feel that they have all the responsibility, but no authority over hiring, no budgeting, no authority over the budget, no authority to tell union people anything or speak to the union people if there are union people involved. You don't know. And, basically siloing in companies is devastating to employee engagement. Humans like to be worked with and talked to, and there's no higher skills training, retraining, and upskilling. So that's the, how do we solve this? How do we engage employees to do the right thing the first time, every time, and make it a good practice? Well, we can start by recognizing what employees really want in every generation. First of all, there are 4 to 5 generations in the workforce. And to tell you the truth, every single person that comes to work in a company, yes, they come there for the salary. Yes, we understand that. But they also have things that are basic to them. And these things are, they want achievement. They want to be able to achieve something every day. They want recognition. They want work that's meaningful. They want to have responsibility and ownership over their own job, They'd like to be advanced to maybe the next level. Maybe they want personal and professional growth through training. So this is our big reason for trying to solve. These are the reasons that we want to take a new approach, a little better approach. Why? Because 39% of workers' key skills are expected to change by 2030. Technological proficiency will grow in importance faster than any other skill category in the coming years. So we have to upskill people. And this came from What's Jobs, and that came from the World Economic Forum. Okay, so we want to be able to upskill people. As again, technical advantages. People will be working side by side with AI and machines. New skills are needed to manage in this digital age. People want economic stability. The LinkedIn 2024 Workforce Learning Project report says that workers who believe that their company invests in them are 94% more likely to stay in the job. 94%. But they're not now. We want to encourage a culture of process improvement, innovation. If we're innovating, we don't want to innovate people out of jobs. We want to use our human critical thinking skills to improve AI. In other words, if you're teaching machines, teach them for the benefit and the improvement of the worker, not to do the worker out of jobs. And then consumer awareness is at an all-time high. So we have to upskill people. Over 80% of consumers look for certs on their packaging. 80%. That means that we're doing a great job of making people aware that they need to look at the food that they're eating and look at the certs. 67% said that they'll actually pay more for food that has been tested and certified as safe food. So why do we reskill people? Why do we reskill them? As I said before, artificial intelligence and machine learning are going to be working side by side with people. That shift means that we have to have community and partnering efforts. We have to be encouraging the trade schools and where people can get a trade or get these short courses that get them certified, and in-house processing, reworking processes, reworking inefficiencies. And then, like I said, encouraging our colleagues and ourselves to take advantage of the trade associations that serve us. If you're engineering, do you belong to your engineering one and to ASQ? Do you have your certs? ASQ has what? 28 certifications. Everybody can have something from a white belt, which is free for all workers in a company, can have the white belt. I've been in medical device companies where every single worker that's a production worker and sanitation workers, everybody that has that level, at that level has the white belt. The next levels have the yellow belt or the CQIA. And the next workers up that go for the higher belt. ASQ has all this. And very cost effective, by the way. And then create new opportunities, do ethical tech innovation, create new opportunities where you can, which we talk about in reskilling, just do new things. Okay, so I have a 3-part strategy for you, which I'm going to go through. Transform your own mindset. Like I said, what you want to do is you want to know that the new paradigm is centered around mindset and understanding, the new workplace. So what do? We train ourselves, we get our mindset together because we feel we have people we can talk to in our ASQ group, in our ASQ discussions here, like tonight and elsewhere, like the forums, the My ASQ. We keep our courage up as we go along because it's difficult. We are not the ones with the authority. We have to be influencers of authority. So we have to understand the personalization of work. We have to understand community collaboration and partnership. We have to understand about continuous training of ourselves and others. And we want to understand that personalization, community, and skilling help people feel valued, recognized for their contributions. It makes them, they desire meaningful work. And if we can reskill processes to make them feel that their work is meaningful, it's just not dumb rote work all over and over and over. And if we can find little ways to advance people, like I said, anybody can get, if it's in their purview, there's the safety specialist, there's a quality specialist or supervisor or manager can encourage their people to get even the white belt. It's free. It's totally free. Okay, so create new work habits. How can we create new work habits? Well, when you have all the responsibility, that means your company expects you to get the job done. If you have control over your own work, can you look at your work and find the gaps, find the inefficiencies? Are they within your power to change, where you can influence yourself and others around you that are in your purview to influence? And look at these inefficiencies and work together to create new work habits. If you create, and I'll give you a strategy in a minute, but if you do this, create new work habits for people, it takes 60 days for a work habit to get ingrained into a person's mentality so that they no longer have to think about something that's repetitive. They own it already and they can be doing more creative things. So what does this 60 days, during these 60 days, you're instilling consistency, developing daily routines that reinforce safety and quality standards. And you're encouraging positive reinforcement. Recognize and reward the people when they perform food safety practices correctly. Now you say, oh, well, I have no budget. I mean, is it so difficult to give a little certificate of completion of the 60 days? Is it, if it's in your purview, to maybe offer ice cream at the end of a shift? I mean, or something special, or whatever's in your purview to do. You are creative. You're the critical thinker. You're the strategist. You can foster these things and foster collaboration and teamwork, because the newer generations in the workforce wish for this. And your third, this is the thing that I thought about. The poke yoke is so simple and wonderful. I love it. Simply stated, mistake proofing. So if you're reworking a process, say for example, you can make that process according to poke yoke. Make it so easy to do that they do it correctly all the time. Make it easy for them to spot mistakes instantly. correct your mistakes right on the spot, or have the people correct it. Yeah, ask them, now what do we do? And if they dumbstruck or they can't speak, they can't speak out, you say, oh, do it the Japanese way. The Japanese way say, you know what, maybe we left out this in the training. Let's retrain on this little thing right here. Let's just retrain and make them feel positive about them. You show them, then they show you, that whole routine. So if you will do this, regular training keeps safety practices top of mind. And mistake proofing minimizes human error. Remember, we said that there's a lot of this that has to do with not training people, and it has to do with human error. So if you mistake proof things by using Poka-Yoke, by putting visual reminders all over the place, you know about the 5 S's. You can do that. You can design equipment to prevent incorrect procedures, color code utensils, do things like that. But always top of mind is continuous improvement, because continuous improvement is how you influence change. So, in conclusion, quality professionals need to be influencers of authority by igniting employee engagement. Employees who are emotionally invested in their work and believe in its importance are more likely to follow safety protocols. And by creating meaningful work, remember I said whatever in your power to rework or create, and then fostering that collaboration, talking to people, having people talk to each other, and using mistake proofing techniques, we can drastically reduce food safety recalls and ensure a safer system for all. So, as quality professionals, we are expected to be the influencers of authority by aligning employees with our mission and empowering them to do the right thing all the time. So I have to say to you that I'm very interested in my ASQ quality professionals joining with me in these things. So I have a call to action. If you would like to learn how to do these things, learn how to be that mentor, that influencer, I'm very fortunate. I have a community college professor that created a mentor training how to be a good mentor. And I'm offering it to you. Anybody can click on that QR code, and we can help you be that influencer of authority in your department, in your company, by just doing what good mentors do. You can help your colleagues personalize work and benefits, personalize the work, give little rewards. You can learn how to create community. That means partnering and collaborating. You can learn how easy it is to encourage skilling. That means people are now hiring according to skills-based training. How well are your people trained? And that means that's their ticket, your ticket, and their ticket on their resume to improve. And these 3 basics will help build a thriving food industry ecosystem in which the contractors and employees, the company is profitable, and its brand reputation is preserved, and the winner is the consumer. Consumer confidence and brand loyalty, because the consumer is happy and smiling and buying your company's products. And just change the word food to medical devices, to dietary supplements, change it to aerospace engineering parts, change it to big construction industry machinery, whatever. It's human igniting the workforce, because they feel they have a part in the new workplace because we've created it. So thank you very much. I'm hoping I didn't overstay my welcome. and I'm here to answer questions if you have them. And I guess it goes back to you now, Michael or Mitchell. I'm sorry, Mitchell.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think Rob, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you take it?
So I guess and thank you, Rosemarie. And now let me just go back to our PowerPoint and go to the section. So now we're moving to a Q&A and networking, as call it, and kind of get things rolling. So in that vein of recalls or anything that Rosemarie has talked about, have you any questions for her, or have you had any experience at your own company with some kind of recall or similar type of a problem? And what was your experience? I know for me, I was in manufacturing, and one of the things we did automotive, one of the things that we did in order to provide for, God forbid, a large recall of a defective part in the auto industry, we had the ability, we marked every single part. We knew what the date it was made, who made it, and so forth, so we could do a physical recall on an auto component. Obviously, that doesn't carry the same significance as a food recall, but it still amounted to the potential of, probably with thousands and thousands of parts, millions of dollars, if the customer deemed the part to be insufficient. And we had to do that recall. So anybody got any other comments they want to make, or questions they want to ask of Rosemarie?
There's a question in the chat that's, if I may, it
Right
says,
ahead.
what will you recommend for a high turnover of plant employees where training is harder? Well, I'll give you the story for the food industry, perhaps, that would be helpful. First of all, it's a pillar of the food law that SSOPs and GMP training has to be done every year for every employee in the company, including management. Okay, so, and according to our auditors, the employee training is perpetual. Every employee has to be trained, and every year they have to go through that same training again. And why is that? Part of it is because people can't remember all this stuff and they forget it. And then a second reason why you want to be doing perpetual training is that they are not, it's required by the law anyway. But anybody that's not in food, for example, so that's just a requirement of the food law, right? And it makes sense because you're dealing with pathogens. So you're constantly training people. It's perpetual and it's required. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you have high plant turnover, every single person has to be trained. What we did, my staff and I in our company, is we created an app, very simple app, that is for all food workers, farm to fork, and it is the SSOPs and the GMPs, and we put it up on our website. And the workers get a badge, and I would suggest that you look for the simplest thing that we can use that in the food industry, plus we use the yellow belt, plus we use the CQIA, plus, right? But The basics for our industry are SSOPs and CGMPs. So we have that app, and that's available. We have it for biotech and for food and dietary supplements. If you don't have anything like that, but you have the white belt, it's free. You can just get it off the website. You don't even have to pay any money. And just every single employee, perhaps as they're onboarded into the company, has to go through that training. That's part of their onboarding, perhaps. So if it's high turnover, they have to go through the training anyway for the short time that they're there. And so I would strongly suggest that you look at the free things that are available, and for your, but then for the people that are going after the higher skills jobs, like your specialists and so forth, you may encourage them to invest in the yellow belt. And it's all e-learning through Six Sigma. Most of it's free. The exam, I think, is the only thing that costs much on the Six Sigma Institute. And the learnings are free. ASQ is a bit more expensive, okay, and there's a really good cert that goes with it. But Six Sigma Institute also has the yellow belt, and the only thing that's expensive is the $99 exam. So, you can train people, and you can ask more of them if they really, because they really want to achieve something. And it's the first one, the white belt is free, basic for everybody. Our trainings happen to be in Spanish and English. I don't know if these other ones are, but you can research it. If you have, different communities involved in your workforce. So I see here that Karina commented, when you have high turnover, she says, the SSOP would state a specific time period to train, usually within 30 days. But the most critical are done on the first day or before. Some temp agencies give the training of the client prior to the first day of work also. So yes, and you don't put critical control points or your most critical monitoring on the first day. You want to cross-train. In other words, you give them the simplest things. That's my recommendation. Whatever industry you're coming from, I see that we had 63 wonderful people dialing in today. I am so thankful. It's very important that we engage our workforces, that we use the tools that are in our hands right now. And there's so much free out there. Do not let cost stop you. There's free. And Karina is our food safety scientist. She took this very extensive onerous law, and with the help of the rest of the team here at Food Smart, what she did is she made it into bite-sized pieces on a PowerPoint presentation that we plunked right up on the website. And very fortunately, one of our team has a significant other that is a born illustrator and illustrated every single slide. Why do we do this? Because we don't know who we're training and teaching, but we do know everybody from farm to fork needs to have this. And over 50%, perhaps 85% of the food workforce from farm to fork is of some type of Latin descent. So we have it in Spanish. Would we like to have it in Tagalog? Would we like to have it in Korean and in Mandarin? Yeah. But we did what we could do with the budget that we have. And you can do the same. The tools out there are incredible. And we just put ours up on our website and we use Google, I think Google Docs, all these things. You have tools in your company. Perhaps you can, perhaps you can use the tools in your company that your company has. There's nothing to stop you. You are the influencer. You are the one that's going to change in employee engagement. And like I said, free to all who copy that QR code, free to you, mentor training so that you can learn and get real solid in your influencer skills. Karina, could you answer the question that Roxana put up there?
Yeah. In regards to SPC or statistical process control, what we do in the food industry, it depends. So like bigger companies have equipment where you have, sorry, have background noise. We have upper and lower control limits, right? Of where critical limits and our operating limits are at, and regarding the quality and food safety, right? So this would work more for continuous cooking, like, you know, if we're on a conveyor belt or things like that, where it's more controlled. But when you're doing a lot of the food production batch to batch by hand, which a lot of these small to medium-sized companies are doing, we don't really do a lot of SPC in the sense of like it's spitting out from a computer. We actually, what we do sometimes is we take the raw data from, you know, the critical control points, and we have to do it via spreadsheet, unfortunately, because they don't have the technology or can pay for the software to do this, because it's all paper and pen, you know, still. So we kind of we do track trends, but they don't, it's not necessarily put in a SPC for the most part. It's usually put on a bar chart or things like that, and then we kind of look at the trend in that way, and to see if, you know, ovens are still working as intended, or the thermometer, you know, is being decalibrated. So there's a lot of different things. It's just that it requires a lot of, I guess, hands-on manpower and time that they don't need, because they're already very streamlined as it is. They're working around the clock, and sometimes this is a bonus, to be honest. It's just something that they don't put a lot of emphasis on. And so as long as our critical control points are being met, there's not a lot of SPC that is done in, at least in the very small companies. I hope that answered the question.
There's another question in the chat I don't think we've addressed, and that what is the threshold to trigger a recall?
Rena, can you help again?
Yeah, actually, I believe it was Robert that put up guidance. Yeah, Robert Mitchell put that the FDA has requirements for mandatory and voluntary recalls. Most recalls are, at least in the food industry, they're due to allergens, so cross contact. We don't call it cross contamination because it's not an actual bacterial, it's a chemical, and usually involves a labeling rather than, you know, the product is still good to eat, just a certain amount of the population can't eat it. So in regards to allergens, there is no threshold. So if you suspect just even a little bit of it might have been, the FDA does not have a limit on allergens, and so you have to recall that. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. The same thing, you know, say for example, you don't meet certain critical control points. Usually we see them in the line before they actually go out to market. Like it's, I honestly have never seen a product sent out that was raw or wasn't cooked all the way. We literally just extend the cook time before we send it out. So that's usually the reason why you see most of the recalls being allergen, is because of lack of you know, verification that the allergen was completely cleaned out prior to the next food product that does not contain the allergen.
Thank you, Karina.
You're welcome.
So to answer this, has your company had a recall? Remember that I said earlier that 750 quality directors in the food industry were interviewed by, I think it's the ETQ quality group. And what they found out, that 73% of the respondents said that their company had experienced at least one recall between 2020 and 2023. And of those companies that said that they had experienced a recall, 67% said that the recall was due to supplier quality issues. And that's why I brought up the McDonald's Taylor Farms. And, you know, supplier quality is so critical because I think Karina would back me up on this one. The FDA sends the recall notices and goes right after the manufacturer or the processor or the farm itself. You know, the suppliers are, if it's a supplier problem, the question is who's checking on the suppliers such that slivered onions don't get into McDonald's restaurants in the first place, or etc. So supplier quality is a huge issue, right, Karina?
Yeah, usually it's because the food industry doesn't have, well, at least very small to medium-sized companies don't have a lot of, it's expensive to do verification lot to lot, that what they're sending you in terms of the certificate of analysis for that product is correct. It does require, the FDA does require that you do verification of your suppliers, and usually that a lot of these companies, they wait for a year before they verify that the COA that was given to the supplier was actually matches the product. And it's because lab is so expensive, and not only do they have to do raw material, and if you have thousands of them, plus, you know, final products that you also have to test, it could just be very expensive. So in regards to recall, I did have a client in the past that did have class 2 recall, but that was under the discretion of the recall coordinator for the state. It went from class 1 to class 2, and that's determined by the FDA. So it was a class 2 because it was actually a, I'm blanking on the type of soy, but it was basically a soy product that was already broken down. And I can't remember the technical name for it now, but basically that's the reason why it was deemed from class 1 to class 2 was because it wasn't straight out soy. The protein was already denatured to the point that if you ingested it, it would cause very little harm. You wouldn't cause death. So that's really the FDA's purview. But that's happened too in recalls. You could be from, you know, class 1, which is like the worst, to bump down a couple depending on the severity of the risk.
Anyone else have any other questions, comments, things to add, experiences for our fellow quality professionals here?
I guess I wanted to also add in regards to the whole, I can't pronounce the scientific name for it, therefore it must not be food. As a scientist, you know, if you took organic chemistry, there are certain technical names for certain chemicals, you know, when you're talking about cholecalciferol, ergocalciferol, you know, vitamin E, vitamin D, or riboflavin, and those are all vitamins. And, you know, in regards to like in general in quality and you know, trying to make sure that when we're communicating, that we communicate what it means so people aren't afraid of these sorts of things, and especially educating your workers about the meaning of these, you know, things that you're putting into people's food. And, you know, there are certain thresholds that we have to meet, but I think that the communication is always important. It's not just the training on how to make the product, but understanding what's going into the product and why, and understanding the food matrix and why we do certain things a certain way. So, you know, if that's always done, I think we could always reduce the amount of recalls too, is just trying to do that continuous learning.
Okay, one more time. Anybody else? Does anyone else have anything they want to add to our discussion tonight?
Oh, yes, that's a great comment from PETA. Yeah, usually the food industry is very good about having it still on site or in the warehouse prior to leaving it out. So best practice is always, send having lab results prior to release of the product. That's always key too, so that you avoid market withdrawals and perception and brand perception going down.
We didn't even really talk about the really bad stuff that happens with some companies that want to cut corners. So, that's something that we have to be on the alert. Such things as economic fraud that happens, and it's not acceptable, where people will add ice to scallops just so when they ship them in the bags, you're getting all the weight of the ice as well. So, that's a true story that happened with one of our auditors. And, so we have economic fraud, and that is a cause for recalls too. And the other thing is that the FDA will, if things come in through the ports, and like Karina said, if they don't have the certificates of analysis or the metal testing certificates with them, the FDA down here in the port of Los Angeles has a huge incinerator, and they just take everything and throw it in the incinerator. It never gets out of the port because they're really afraid of pests. They're really afraid of contamination and bad things, happening. So it's important that all the suppliers deliver the correct certificates. Metal testing is a big one. And I think Karina also told me that these people that are supplying from outside the country have to supply a letter of guarantee that says that the product is certified to have been 50 miles away from a nuclear power plant. And sometimes the people in the plant don't know these things. And that's a benefit of really making sure that you, as the quality or safety specialist, just continuously improve yourself, in all your learnings. And that's really important that we're aware of every single thing that we have to keep our eyes on. It's critical for the food safety, and just from a self-preservation approach, just thinking about yourself and your team. You don't want yourself or your team to be disbanded because there was a recall, and maybe you're not the one responsible, but you know what? Everybody in the company suffers. That's why the new workplace that we're talking about calls for us, more collaborating together, asking more questions, be curious. You're the strategist. Keep asking the questions and keep depending on your colleagues, like here in ASQ, to bounce ideas about, and so forth and so forth. So I'm very thankful that I had the chance to speak to you all today, because this is very, very important. We in California are the food basket of the entire country. And no doubt we're also supplying food for around the world in some regards. So it's a matter also of pride on our part that we take care of our food supply. Yeah, and somebody made a contact. Food fraud is very common in juice and spices. You're absolutely right, Ronnie. We've run into that and absolutely directed people to food attorneys so that the food attorneys could help set their their heads straight, but we did not want to be involved with them because we're not the ones. If it gets to a recall, then we can't help you anymore. It's in the Department of Justice, and that's the first thing that the auditor tells the client is your next call is to your attorney as they're walking out the door, issuing you a recall. And food fraud, bad, bad, bad. And it also happens in dietary supplements. And we have people in our ASQ group that are just the most wonderful detectives and auditors and helpers to help straighten out the dietary supplement industry. It's very easy to put product out there that's not 100% of what you say is in there. So, and so forth.
Oh,
One for you. If a food batch
okay.
missed some inspection, what is the criteria to find another substitute lot to take inspection data?
Okay, can you elaborate on this question? I don't quite understand it.
Check.
Yeah, check.
Yes. In other words, if a lot, if a food lot has missed some inspection steps, is there a possibility? And if so, what is the criteria to find a substitute lot to perform the inspection so that the original lot that missed that inspection step could also be shipped out to supermarkets?
Oh, are you asking if, say, for example, you had a work in, we call it a WIP, a work in progress, right? A WIP missed some sort of inspections and you still had it in there. Are you asking whether or not, if it missed some inspections, what can we do? I can tell you a classic example actually that just happened recently. It's actually, it wasn't a WIP, it was a final product. They left the worker forgot to put the creme brulee away in the freezer overnight. And it was a lot. And you can imagine it's like double cart, in an oven. So they're like, what do we do? And what they did was, because we have time and temperature controls too as a limit. Like as soon as it's done cooking and reaching the kill step, we cool it down and then we put it in the freezer. We blast chill it normally. So what we did is we sent a certain, we kind of determined the statistical number that would represent the lot, and we sent those out for testing. And I kid you not, the product came back completely fine. No standard plate count, no SBC, no APC, no mold, no yeast, no nothing. It was like we were astounded that this happened. So and all of them, they came out perfectly fine. And so that kind of proves the point that as long as you're doing, I guess in Japan they call it total quality management, right? Where every single step, you're cleaning, you're everything, and you get to a point where what we call in the food industry, the initial microbial load is maintained low throughout the entire process, so that when you have the kill step, it is very effective. As long as you're doing that, then it kind of proved the point that, we did everything right. And at the end, everything turned out fine and nobody got sick from it. They were able to release the product after results were brought back. So you could send it out for testing and see if it, turns out, but you do have to determine, at least what is a good sample size for that lot to send out for testing. Because not all microorganisms grow. We sent the entire product, not just chunks of it. Like it was in ramekins. So we sent quite a few to be sent out throughout, the cart, and where it was positioned in the cart. We kind of did worst case scenario where it would stay kind of, warm still, and in the what they call the temperature danger zone. And then we sent those out, and there was nothing. It was amazing, honestly. Yeah, and that's another thing, Ronnie. You always want to keep retains after release. At least it depends on the shelf life of the product, but yeah, at least up to a year If it's 6 months, at least a year, it's always double the shelf life. At least in the food industry it is. I hope that answers your question, Chuck. That you could also test your WIP. Like we have clients that do that their base product is shelf stable, but the final product is refrigerated for quality reasons. But the product is completely shelf stable, but they do it anyways. And they've done a lot of extensive internal lab tests in order to prove the case that the product meets, certain requirements. And it really is beholden to the food company to do that, to do these, what they call validation testing for your cooling, for your cooking, your cleaning. We do all that. And the reason is because, just like case in point with what happened with that creme brulee company. But also it's important to note that that, if for whatever reason you suspect like you're not comfortable with it, it's better to toss it. And that's the thing, is like if just, something happened where you just cannot get it out of your head that you don't feel comfortable doing it, it is better to be safe than sorry.
Thanks, Karina.
And in regards to what is the criteria to find another substitute, it's like you create that within your quality management system. Like what happens in it has to be in your HACCP plan. Like, what are the corrections? What do you do? And so to find a substitute to take in all that has to be within your FSMA/HACCP plan. Like it has to be stated in there and in your quality management food safety system. Because you can't just arbitrarily not have that in place in case of something happens.
Okay, if no one else has anything else, we've reached our 7:15 point for us to move on to this section business meeting. So thank you very much, Rosemarie, and also Karina, for your input tonight. Definitely, I think everybody has learned quite a bit new. I know I have, and I've been in quality for 40 years, but never worked in the food industry. And it's kind of interesting um, the depth of the quality requirements that we have to deal with that we don't think of on a day-to-day basis, but y'all in the food industry do need to keep us all safe.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed it, and I hope that some of the tips for training and retraining and upskilling works for everybody. And I'm very happy to share anything I can with you. You know how to get in touch with me. I'm out here in California. Thank you again. I'm going to sign off now.
All right. Thank you and good night.
Good night. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemarie. Have
You're
a
welcome.
wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.